It's fucking up my green screen.
Okay. All right. And this is the 2022-2023 Detroit Red Wings season preview. I'm Taylor Phillips. I'm here with special guest Kyle Busch from the Healthy Scratch podcast and Bushy and Bobo show. Kyle, it's that time. By the way, you can follow him on Twitter at KyleBusch11 and Healthy Scratch podcast at Healthy Scratch 6. By the way, it's that time. The Red Wings tonight, they dropped the puck on opening night at Little Caesars Arena against the Montreal Canadiens. But hey, we're going to preview the entire season. The opening night's just one game. So the Red Wings team rankings are like this. The score ranks them 23rd in preseason, after the preseason. The offseason, they were ranked 20th. ESPN ranks them 21st. They were this close to the top 20, Kyle. So they stacked. They like we said, they got a new head coach and they got stacked talent.
If you look at things like just regular rankings, I don't believe in those at all. If you're looking at rankings based on statistics, then great. But also, brand new season, they have a third of their team is new, so going off of last year is out the window. So this is something where like Detroit sports fans, like if you're a fan of, the Red Wings, the Tigers, the Pistons, the Lions, which I'm not a Lions fan, but if all four of them, right, you've been starving for years now for something, right? And is this the team to do it? Is it like obviously the Pistons? You could make the argument that they could be the ones that could be turning the corner too. But the argument was also made about the Tigers this year. The argument was made about the Lions. So I think Detroit fans are probably a little bit, I don't know if I want to fully buy in, but I'm here to say that you should buy in a little bit because this team is going to be better. They have to be. There's no way they can get worse. But with a new coach, with some new systems, new players, there's bound to be some hiccups. So I'm definitely thinking that that's going to happen. But you have to look on the positives for sure.
Yeah. Like we said, they got Andrew Kopp, Dominic Kubalik. I know they picked up Ben Sherratt, which initially you did not like, but also Ole Mata and David Perron, Ville Husso, and
we now have a rookie giant in the lineup as well, which
yes.
we should probably talk about him too. But the opening night lineup is also very interesting. Now, opening night is tonight. I was supposed to be there. I may or may not have had major surgery, so I will not be there, unfortunately. But I was a little surprised. But now here's the thing. I say I was a little surprised, but the Red Wings have so much depth this year that this was bound to happen. Obviously, Fabry's still out with an injury. Wallman's still out with an injury. So Philip Zadina and Pius Suter are healthy scratches tonight. Like, they're not in the lineup. And I was a little bit shocked because I liked how Zadina played in the preseason. Obviously, Derek Lalonde and the coaching staff really liked what Elmer Soderblom did in the preseason more, because that's, I think, where Zadina would have slot in. So it was one of those things where a lot of people were quick to jump on the, wow, the whole thing was, a new coach for Zadina that'll kickstart him. This might be part of it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. Like, listening to Derek Lalonde when he was hired in his introductory press conference, he was talking all about relationships and, putting players in a position to succeed. This might be a start of something where he's like, I'm going to reset you, right? I mean, he had Zadina on the penalty kill in the preseason, which I thought he looked pretty good. Trying to make him more of a two-way player because he's obviously not a pure goal scorer like he was said to be coming out of the draft. And that happens a lot with players. So was I a little surprised that Zadina's a scratch? Yes. But I mean, the next game he might be in. You never know, right? With a team with this much depth, if you don't have a good game, you could be out of the lineup, right? Like, you have to be ready for that opportunity and to take it. Pius Suter had a really nice season last year. He was a second line center. Obviously, Michael Rasmussen being, like, I think slotted on the third line. Joe Veleno is going to play. He had a good preseason. And we brought in Andrew Kopp as the second line center. So now you immediately have a logjam of centermen on this team. So somebody's not going to, slot in. And I think we're so used to the old Mike Babcock, Jeff Blashill, the veteran wins a tie, where this is maybe a little bit shocking, where it's like, wait, like Soderblom and Veleno are playing? Like, oh, okay. Because I expected one or maybe both of them to not be in the lineup. So just because they can go to Grand Rapids so easily, it's such an easy thing to be like, well, I'll put Veleno and Soderblom in Grand Rapids to start. It's an easy thing to do. The hard thing to do is, hey, they deserve to play the opening night and we'll go from there, which is what they're doing, which I do respect. So it's definitely going to be something where earn your spot and then you got to keep it.
Mm-hmm. And let's get to Ville Husso. He's going to be the starting goaltender and perhaps the number one goaltender, perhaps because he outplayed Alex Nedeljkovic in the preseason, and Nedeljkovic just had such a rough game in net in Toronto last Saturday in their final preseason game.
Yeah, I don't put stock in the preseason at all. So I tweeted about, there's a couple goals that, what was the game? I was at the Detroit game when Toronto was in Detroit, and Ned let in a couple stinkers. And I think I tweeted, well, Husso's the starter. And I'm like, well, no, they're going to be 1A and 1B. Like whoever is winning is going to play and they're going to have the net. I mean, if you keep playing well, they'll be in. But again, it's the same thing as the depth with the forwards and the defense. If you are playing well, you will play. If you aren't, someone is chomping at your heels ready for that opportunity. And I think that's why I liked when they traded for Ville Husso, having Nedeljkovic as well. Last year, he didn't have anybody to really challenge him because Thomas Greiss was not good. And that's being very nice about it. So
right.
Honestly, I haven't even seen who's going to start tonight. I was actually thinking it was going to be Nedeljkovic just because he was there last year. Usually their morning skate is around now. So I'll usually take a peek and see, who's going to be starting and things like that. I mean, whoever's going to be in tonight, I think they'll go with, I don't even think it says who's in tonight. Not yet, but we'll see. I mean, it's going to be one of them. And I think obviously playing Montreal, you should expect a win. They're clearly a rebuilding team, but they beat Toronto in their opener, and they look pretty good. And Marty St. Louis is a good coach. I was reading an article sent to me by a buddy that was St. Louis talking about his coaching experience and how he went from Bantam to here, but he's an NHL Hall of Famer. Like he knows what he's doing, and sounded very similar to Derek Lalonde in how he's going to build that team while they're rebuilding, if you know what I mean, right? So to keep these guys playing at a high level, let them do what they're capable of doing. So I think it's going to be a good game tonight for sure. Wish I could be there, but hopefully we get the win, start the season off strong. That would be nice because the last few seasons, I don't think they've won the home opener. Last year's home opener was great because they played Tampa. Remember that crazy game? I think they lost 6-5 in overtime. Like they hung with
it was 7 to, I think it was 7 to 6.
Yeah.
They had a 3-goal lead and they fucking blew it.
Right, but they were playing the Stanley Cup champions and they played them.
Stanley
Cup
Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning.
They shouldn't even have been hanging with them at all, right? But I'm hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that this year with Detroit maybe surprising you against some teams.
Yeah. And one more thing, Andrew Kopp, this is going to be short and sweet. We've been hearing from the grapevine, from the media, that he's going to be ready by the first week of the regular season. Is he going to be ready for opening night tonight?
They say he's in the lineup tonight, so he's going to be on the second line is what I'm seeing anyway, which is where I think he was kind of slotted him in. So, I mean, if you want to kind of just quickly go through the lines, I mean, your top line last year was Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Raymond. The second line, now, I said you had a bunch of new players from last year. So Kopp in the middle with Perron on the right side, but also Jakub Vrana is going to be playing on that left wing, and he was out for pretty much the whole season last year. He came back, I think, in February. Get a full season of Vrana. He might be that breakout candidate, like 35, 40 goals. I could see it. Then you've got Soderblom, Rasmussen. Sundqvist didn't play any preseason games because he was hurt, but he's in the lineup as well. He was joking that he's the shortest guy on that line, even though he's like 6'1". And then the fourth line, I mean, interesting. Adam Ernie, Joe Veleno, and Dominic Kubalik. I didn't really see that coming. Obviously, I was just going off, again, don't put so much stock in a preseason, but looking at the lineups, usually it's kind of like they'll keep lines together. And I kept seeing, Kubalik with Zadina and Suter. Now it makes sense because, those are the guys that were maybe, on the bubble, so to speak. But Zadina and Suter extras. I'm in the camp of like, I'm tired of seeing Adam Ernie as like a thing here. I think a lot of people are tired. Like, it's like, can we put our stock into some of our, like guy like Zadina, or like give him the ice time. But I get that there's going to be competition. I know Adam Ernie had a good preseason. I know he had like 2 or 3 goals, and he earned that spot. But man, there's got to be a short leash with those fourth, like basically the bottom 6 and the bottom pair D. I mean, like there has to be a lot of moving around, and I think you're going to see a lot of different looks in that bottom 6 for sure, just because it's a new coaching staff. They're trying to figure out who plays with who. They're not going to do exactly what Blashill did last year. That'd be ridiculous. I mean, obviously it didn't work. So, and then on D, I mean, we're going to see a new face as well, with Robert Hagg. So he didn't play a preseason game because he was hurt as well, but he was brought in. Obviously, Wallman is out. They signed Mark Pysyk, who immediately, I think, tore his Achilles, so they replaced him with Robert Hagg. Which, hey, we got some interesting lineups there. We got Sherratt with Seider, Mata with Hronek, and then Hagg with Gustav Lindstrom. Jordan Osterley is the extra there. So again, like the one thing that I can say, just to try to like generalize the lineup this year, if one word, is depth. They finally have some depth that,
Big time.
they have an injury here or there. It's like, it's good problems to have. Like when Robbie Fabry comes back, if this was the lineup, like what do you do? Right? Like who comes out? It's a good problem to have because you now you have more talent. Now, is it top end talent? I mean, with Kopp and Perron, I'd say it's a little more, that second line, it's perfect for them, right? I mean, this is something where last year Soderblom, Rasmussen, and Sundqvist would have been like your second line, Now it's your third. Magically, you have depth. Your power play should be better. Like with Kopp, your penalty kill should be better. With Sherratt and Mata and all the guys you brought in. Like everything should, on paper, get better. But I always say to Bobo, that's why they play the games. Right? Because it doesn't mean anything. Like,
Gotta earn wins.
Yeah, you have to earn it. I've talked at length about how I liked what they did in the offseason. I mean, but now you got to show it, right? This is where you're going to see hopefully some progress. I hope LCA is bumping tonight. And I hope they get the win. And I hope they can use that to kind of catapult into the season. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and hopefully Game 1 tonight will be an example against those Habs.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and Steve Camper, he was placed on waivers, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, he was going to be in Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids. Okay.
Because he's just older, so you got to get waived to get sent down. So, yeah, there's no shot he was making that team. I think he's just depth for Grand Rapids. And, I mean, if you have a bunch of injuries, he is serviceable and can come up and play. That's kind of what you got him for.
Yep. All right. So I think we've covered everything, Kyle. Like I said, it was short and sweet. We mentioned the rankings and threw the statistics in there. The starting and number 1 goaltenders. We still don't know who it's going to be. Nedeljkovic only allowed those 2 stinkers at home against Toronto. I don't even know who started in Toronto on Saturday.
So it was Victor Brattstrom. They didn't dress the regular lineup at all. Yeah. The one thing that I think I was going to actually bring up to you to see what you are thinking is, so obviously, you would hope the Wings right now, like I would say, if we're talking like this is a season preview, I think in March, you want the Red Wings to be, we call like in the graphic. You know what I mean? Like for the playoffs, you want them to kind of be there. Like, is it possible that they make the playoffs? Yeah, it is. Obviously, it's possible. Anything can happen. But is it something where, what's the expectation? I heard Derek Lalonde talking about, to have that crazy jump in points usually doesn't happen with a new group, maybe, but like you want them to be playing meaningful games in March, right? In April, like best case scenario, yeah, you make the playoffs, but you're probably going to get donked in the first round. But also having that, there's a 5-game stretch at the end of the season, our last 5 games, and it's like, okay, we got to win 3 of them, and then maybe you win 2, and you're like, gosh, we just fell short. But like, man, what a run at it. I was talking with Bobo about like what would have to happen for Detroit to make the playoffs. Obviously, they'd have to have a great year, but someone in that Atlantic division's got to fall off. And the one team that I can see that happening to would be the Boston Bruins. Just with the injuries they have on defense, they are getting older. They're still talented. I could see them falling off a little bit. And the other team, I mean, might be Florida in a way. And really, and this is going to be like shocking, like Toronto. I could see Toronto, like, I don't say the like bottoming out. They have really good players, but they haven't changed from last year. And in my opinion, they got a little bit worse. Their goaltending's not as good. Their depth isn't as good, which is already a problem for them. So Detroit, if they win their divisional games and they're splitting divisional games, that's kind of what you want, just to kind of hang around, wait in the weeds. But another thing too is, well, what happens if maybe they're not doing so well? Like I always look at, you never want to be in a season like this and then be like, oh, we're sellers at the deadline. Like that would be the worst case scenario, right? So you got some big boys that you got to make some decisions on here. Now they've come out and said Dylan Larkin wants to re-sign. He wants to be a Red Wing for life. That's great. He's your captain. I am totally for that, and I'm going to ask you a question about him. And then Tyler Bertuzzi as well. He's coming up UFA as well. Pius Suter, Oscar Sundqvist, Adam Ernie. Those are 3 that you could definitely replace. So it's one of those things where you see how they've built this lineup, where like the guys that they want are signed for a couple of years. And you got some wiggle room because Mata, Jordan Osterley, like they're off the books next year as well. So is Nedeljkovic. So you have a lot of flexibility. But my question is, how much are you willing to pay Dylan Larkin?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Magnificent M commented, "Good morning, fellow Red Wing fans. I'm probably the only one who will say Veleno and Zadina shouldn't be sent back down. Love the way they move on the ice. Need to build more defense in their game."
So I'm going to say, I don't think you're the only one. I think you're in the 99%. I think there's like probably 1% that's like, oh, they're no good. No, so Veleno and Zadina, like they are going to be in the lineup this year. Obviously, Veleno's in the lineup tonight. Zadina's just a scratch, so they're not sending him down. There's no way they'll send him down. I don't even think he's waiver exempt anymore, so they can't just send him down. But it's more just about the ice time, because these guys are young. And I think there is a plan there where Derek Lalonde and the coaching staff is maybe seeing something in Philip Zadina that maybe the other coaching staff didn't. And they're maybe trying to mold a certain part of his game. And he would need to be in a specific part of the lineup, in a specific role. You know what I mean? So it might be something where it might shock us as like, because we were fed this bill of, oh, he's a pure goal scorer. Like Kenny Holland said, he's a pure goal scorer. Great. Yeah, he wasn't junior, right? Now maybe in the NHL, I mean, that was his problem last year, was scoring on his opportunities. He had a very low shooting percentage, had a lot of chances. It wasn't burying them. Now this year could totally change. Maybe he just had, he didn't have the horseshoe up his ass. This year, maybe he does. So I think they'll take it slow with these young guys, allow them to make some mistakes here and there, right? So that you don't have the fire under you. But like there is that competition part where it's like you need to earn your spot. So yeah, I don't think with that comment, I don't think you're in the minority at all. I think you make total sense. They shouldn't be, and they won't be. But so I was asking you, Taylor. So what do you think, like with Dylan Larkin? So with him, you're going to have to give him an 8-year deal, and right now he's 26, and he's your guy, right? He's your captain, and you're going to have to pay him. Now, the one thing is the salary cap is rumored to be going up a lot next year, about $5 million. So everybody's going to have a little more wiggle room. Now, if I said you're going to have to pay Dylan Larkin at least $8.5 million a year, would that shock you? Would that sound good? Are you going to say no way? Like, where would you feel? Like, where are you on that if I ask you that?
Well, Dylan Larkin is just plain good as a hockey player. Yeah, and he's a good captain, a good team leader. I think you do it.
So what I'm actually looking here, and something that, in my opinion, is interesting to do, and whenever you see a signing, so like currently there was a few signings that to me mirror exactly what Dylan Larkins is going to be. One of them is Thomas Hertl with the San Jose Sharks. Another one, Matthew Barzal with the Islanders. Robert Thomas with the St. Louis Blues. You can kind of go down the list. Now, Cap Friendly is awesome for this because you can actually compare contracts. It'll match, their age, when they signed it. It'll give you a percentage of like how much of a match this contract is, the cap hit, what position they are, how many points they had at the time. And looking at these comparables, I'm thinking, even this Mika Zibanejad contract last year when he was 28, you're going to be paying Larkin at least $8 million. And like a lot of people are shying away from that. I'm here to say don't, because like you said, obviously he's your captain, but he led your team in points. He's a 30 goal scorer. Easy, right? Like that's what he is. He has proven that he's a top line center. He did that last year. That was my kind of question about Dylan Larkin last year. I made a YouTube video that said, should we trade Larkin if he doesn't have a good year? Obviously not. That was the easy question to answer, but I went through, well, why would you? Right? I mean, obviously it's a small percentage chance that you would have done that last year.
To your point, Larkin's a Red Wing for life.
If he signs his contract, right? So like he wants to be here, that's great. If you get to a point where like if this team bottoms out, and they're horrible, which would be, again, worst case scenario, and you're at the deadline and you're like, we got to sell. The only sellable assets you have are Dylan Larkin and Tyler Bertuzzi and maybe Alex Nedeljkovic, depending on how he does. But I mean, I don't want that to happen. I don't think anybody wants that to happen. You want to continue to build. We don't want to continue this stupid fire sale. I want to get to the trade deadline and be buyers, damn it. I want to buy a defenseman. I want to, hey, a second round pick for whoever, like just to kind of get you over the hump, help you kind of, get into that playoff conversation. And then next year you're going for the playoffs. There's no excuse next year. That's what you want to see. But again, it's like with Detroit fans. Now I'm a Red Wings fan, but with Detroit fans, the Lions have hurt you. The Tigers have hurt you. Like all these teams, there's no one that's really, can you imagine if the Red Wings start playing well? Like this city is yours for the taking. Like any team that starts winning in Detroit now, you're going to be beloved by your fans because no one's winning. Everyone sucks. So the Pistons, the Red Wings, they're building up. I don't know what the hell's happened at the other two teams. Looks like the Tigers are going to rebuild the rebuild. The Lions are the Lions.
Restart their rebuild. They hired a new team president, the Tigers did. And the Lions, Dan Campbell, he's dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like you shouldn't really be learning on the job when you have a professional coaching gig, but that's just me. Anyway, I'm an Eagles fan. They're 5-0. I can't complain. So,
yeah, they're 5-0. I've been hearing that. Yeah.
So I would be totally comfortable even if like they were like, oh, we're giving Larkin like 8.5 for 8 years. Yeah, sure. Like that's just what it is, cost of doing business. Because then looking at the percentage of the salary cap hit, I think you can still look at that and go, yeah, it's still a decent piece of the pie. You didn't get that much more than what he was getting. And I think that's what GMs look at too, is the salary cap hit, and they look at the percentage of their cap, how much they're giving to that player. So I think it still gives you a lot of wiggle room. You're obviously going to have to re-sign, Seider and Raymond after next year, coming off the entry-level deal. They're going to get paid. So everyone's going to get their money, but I think it's going to be a very interesting season for the Red Wings, especially with all of these new faces having, Vrana for the whole season. Seeing a guy like Andrew Kopp for the first time tonight in a Wings uniform is going to be interesting to see. Can David Perron continue to do what he's doing at the level he's been doing at 34 years old, right? Because he's been fantastic, very, very underratedly, getting 60 points a year, flirting with 30 goals every year, making everyone's power play better, being a Stanley Cup champion with St. Louis. Like there's a lot of potential here. I am excited for it. I'm a little bit tempered, but my expectations, again, you get to March, you're in the graphic, you're in the wild card hunt, and you never know. I mean, one team can get a bad injury, they can have a bad year. Just because you see these rankings, you see that, the people making tier lists, like me and Bobo did one, and it's like, I don't know. Who knows? That's why you play the game. So I think there's no reason to not be positive about this team going forward. So I think it's going to be a fun season. And obviously, I hope they win. I mean, we've seen enough losing, damn it. I don't want to see the tank anymore. We have our young guys. We still have prospects coming up, right? I mean, Simon Edvinsson is in Grand Rapids. Mm-hmm. And that's where he should be. And that's something that we didn't even talk about, Simon Edvinsson. I mean, in the preseason, he had a couple moments. He had a couple bad moments where I was like, oh boy, he's not ready yet. But I had the same thing, and not to say that I'm some scout or something, but I have eyes. But it happened with Zadina. The first few preseason games I watched, he was floating. He was not ready. So go to Grand Rapids. And then with Seider, he didn't look good the first year he came over and did preseason. He looked a little bit lost. Went back, played with Grand Rapids for half the season, went back to Rogla, played there, came back, Calder Trophy. Is Edvinsson going to do that? Probably not. I don't think he's Mo Seider, but I think
there's
he's
only
very
one.
Solid. Yeah, I think he would at the best. I hope he would be like a top pair guy, but the top four, you don't find those very often. So I think he needs to, from what I was watching, he needs to be quicker, and in two ways: quicker physically and quicker thinking. And that comes with just playing on the smaller ice. You got to think these kids come from playing in Europe. The ice is bigger. He was playing professionally with Frölunda over there too. But it is a big transition. I mean, I've played on Olympic size ice and I've played on just standard. It's totally different. The game changes. You have less time, you have less space. You have to be quicker with your decisions. Your mistakes are amplified. Like you make a mistake, everyone sees it, right? There's not a lot of cover up there. It's the professional leagues, right? So I like to see that Simon Edvinsson is starting in Grand Rapids. Doesn't mean he can't come up. Again, if there's an opportunity.
He can.
But I think with this team, I think you're going to see him there probably all year. And he might come up, do the 9-game stint at the end of the year, get a little bit of the tryout, get your feet wet, dive in next year. Because I think they want it to be consistent for these prospects so they're not firing up and down all the time. Get a spot in Grand Rapids, run the power play, be on the top pair, bingo 50 points if you can. Hey, we'll see what you can do at the end of the year, and we'll go from there. Try and develop these guys, right? Because you don't want to rush them, And, I mean, they have a few guys still. Jonathan Berggren still hasn't made the team. He had an awesome year in Grand Rapids, 60 points, right? Set a rookie record. Didn't crack the lineup. He'll probably be the one that gets a call up if someone gets hurt, right? So, just even looking at the prospect pipeline, Albert Johansson is in Grand Rapids now. You've got Marco Kasper playing with Rogla, the 8th overall pick from last year. There is a bounty. Sebastian Cossa is going to be playing in Grand Rapids. They did not send him back to junior. They think he's ready for pro hockey. That's great. So a lot of things to be excited for, even especially with Grand Rapids. I feel like this is a year where I'm really going to be tuned in on how the Griffins are doing as well. I've actually never been to a Griffins game. I kind of want to go to one just because of kind of the hype and some of these younger guys. I want to see how they do. And there's multiple players on that team that I'm feeling like we should be watching because they, I think, will be Red Wings at one point in the next few years.
Yeah. All right. So Simon Edvinsson, Grand Rapids. So that is pretty much everything we covered now, isn't it?
I think so.
Yep. All right. So Kyle, thanks very much for hanging in there. You can follow Kyle Busch on Twitter at Kyle Busch 11 and the Healthy Scratch podcast on Twitter at Healthy Scratch 6. You can like the Healthy Scratch podcast on Facebook. Also, follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_truth. Also follow Healthy Scratch _hockey on Instagram. like the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Facebook and subscribe to its YouTube channel and subscribe to Healthy Scratch on YouTube as well. So awesome job. Thanks very much. Special shout outs go to Cali Tickets. Get a hold of Mark Goldman, 877-225-8425, or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing my Michigan Sports Truth logo on my t-shirt and long sleeve shirt. And United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, where Jim Lyons, a former Detroit Sports Rag member, well, still in my eyes a DSR group member, works. So with that being said, the Michigan Sports Truth podcast is a presentation and production of Phillips Media. Kyle, again, thanks very much. We'll talk again down the road.
Sounds good.
All right. Ta-ta for now. Power of the people, hit them with a hind. Go Wings.